Let's talk Sherrone Moore. Yeah, it's January, late January, and we have a new coach at a gigantic program. And you know what? This did not start. There was a chance, right? There was rumors that maybe Brian Kelly, right? You thought that we all thought it was a pretty good chance that it was Sherrone Moore, right? He did a great job as a replacement. You already have the national championship like culture in that room, right? Do everything you can to keep what you got. But there was a chance that this could have set off a new chain reaction, and we would have been talking about more coaching carousel. So it seems like this is the final like leg of, unless there's any other coaches that decide to take NFL jobs, like maybe Chip Kelly. I don't know, he might do that. But needless to say, I liked the hire a lot. I thought this should have been your 1A option for sure. Dude's 37 years old. He's been with Michigan since 2018. He had experience in Central Michigan as well, Louisville before that as well. He's an offensive lineman. I like offensive line coaches. I like defensive players that turn out to be head coaches, and I like offensive line head coaches. I do. I like toughness and I like grit. And you know what? It's a different perspective. And he knows what's important. And he knows building in the offensive line and the defensive line is very important. Very important. So to review what he did on offense this year, it was nothing short of spectacular. They won a national championship with Sherrone Moore at the helm, running the offense. They're 12th in the country in points per game, first in scoring margin. They were top 20 in first half points per game, top 20 in second half points per game. They were a top 5 team in fourth down conversion rate. They were top 20 team in third down conversion rate. Their yards per attempt passing wise was very efficient. They ran the ball good enough. He did a really good job. I imagine you have some thoughts on this hire.
Yeah, no, I like you said, this was 1A for them. And I think what validates that not only was his performance on the field, his value as a recruiter and a developer at positions of need and almost the identity of the roster. You mentioned the O-line, you mentioned the physicality that he brings to a conference and to a team that really needed that a couple of years ago, but totally revamped their identity and obviously has dominated the Big Ten ever since. Yeah, Sherrone Moore is a great hire. And who knows that better than the Michigan athletic department, than the Michigan staff and the players. Everybody, I'm sure, gave his approval, including Jim Harbaugh. If you're good enough for all those guys, after having a couple season long interview, right? Even though he is younger, like you said, he doesn't have a ton of experience at the Power Five level or coaching in general. I mean, his first job was a GA at Louisville back in 2009, right? If you remember those Charlie Strong teams, like that, this has been a pretty meteoric rise. You mentioned, or it's similar to obviously, and it will always be compared to the program of Ohio State and Ryan Day when he took over for a guy, a legend like Urban Meyer, a very successful program that it was in the same its own right. And also now you're passing it down, Jim Harbaugh to Sherrone Moore here after winning national championships. Very, very distinct company to be taken over as a national championship as a new coach in the following year. I mean, we mentioned it was back in the 90s when Nebraska did it. It's very hard. I'm sure Sherrone Moore is feeling the pressure. I'm sure Michigan fans are nervous and anxious for a lot of reasons, but I do think this hire, not only in the short term, keeps the roster and the fan base together and that culture together that did so much success for you, but also long term with I think his upside as a recruiter, which I'll get into a little bit later, can really also elevate this program or continue to keep this program elevated at the top of the Big Ten, at the top of college football, where that big blue belongs.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. One thing I'll say that was really big, and we mentioned this briefly off air before the show started. They lose their strength and conditioning coach. He's headed to San Diego, or not San Diego. Oh my goodness, what am I? My dad. Did I? Well, I did. We did grow up watching the San Diego Chargers. We are old enough
Mm.
to have grown up watching Philip Rivers sling the pill over there. But he heads over to Los Angeles for the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh. That I think is a huge factor, man. Like there are a couple strength and conditioning coaches like that you look at in the country, and based on the programs, right? Like how do you perform based on the talent level that you're recruiting in high school? And Michigan has outperformed. Schools like Iowa have outperformed. Schools like Washington have outperformed. Point to those strength and conditioning staffs, that culture in that weight room. That is a big that is a big deal. That is a big, big deal. So, and they're gonna get a top tier guy, right, to come in there and replace whatever that was that they had, and I'm sure it'll be fine. But it, I can't imagine it'll be the same, right? I can't imagine it'll be the same.
No, this is massive. I mean, if you've ever been around a program or a football or in general college football, like strength and conditionings, yes, the X's and O's aren't there, but in terms of like what the 9 months, the beauty of football we talked about a lot of times is like you practice so much, you have all off season just for a couple games on a couple Saturdays in the fall, right? A lot of times these coaches, yes, they can work X's and O's, they can watch film, they can work on technique all year, but the main people that have them, these players all throughout the off season is the strength staff. And that the fourth quarter program at Alabama and Scott Cochran was made famous in college football circles because of how tough it was and because you saw them dominate teams in the second half of the season and also in games, in big time games. They had the juice and the energy. We saw in Michigan a lot of times this year, just being physically dominant for the past couple of years, like you mentioned, and obviously big time below. I'm sure the Chargers are welcome to have him, along with Jesse Minter, another very good defensive coordinator, defensive mind. We talked about him last episode with Jim Harbaugh leaving potentially, and obviously everything going on there with the Ravens and John Harbaugh and that little pipeline they've had with Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter now. So now we'll see what he does at D coordinator there and strength coach staff. It sounds like they're hiring from within, right? They're just promoting the assistant strength coach to be the top strength coach there, which is obviously good to keep continuity there. So we'll see if he can continue that motivation and work ethic that they've had for so long now.
Yeah, keeping continuity there, huge, huge for this program. So I like that hire. But before we give grades, we got to give expectations, right? What are the expectations for the program in Michigan? To me, it's complicated because Michigan does not recruit at the level that Ohio State does. They do
Well, okay,
not.
here's what I want to ask you real quick. I want to give you your expectation. Now we kind of change it up on you a little bit. Put you on the spot here. Is yes, give me the expectation of wins per year in the new Big Ten, the new college football playoff era. But I also want to hear what you think they're going to recruit at, what the level you think they're going to recruit at, because they've been like when Harbaugh first got there, they were consistently in the top six, top seven. Remember, they signed guys like Rashawn Gary and Jabril Peppers, big time classes early in Michigan. Didn't quite produce Big Ten championships like the last couple classes have, which have been in the early teens, right, and kind of lower than you'd expect a program like Michigan. I think part of that is due to Harbaugh's flirting with the NFL and how hard is it to sign with a guy like that, and how much recruiting is he doing on National Signing Day when he's literally taking an interview on National Signing Day, which is crazy in its own right. Still won a national championship. Michigan fans don't care. I'm sure. I'm sure they're loving it, no matter what the results. But yeah, I want to ask your recruiting expectations and also maybe if that translates to your different win totals. I guess.
My expectations that they're actually going to recruit at a better level. Like for all the reasons that you just mentioned. Sherrone Moore is a good recruiter. Jim Harbaugh was flirting with the NFL a bunch. And, they're coming off a national championship win. Like they might lose some talent in the transfer portal. I mean, as we're recording today, not a lot, I think, is in the transfer portal. Most of the draft. We're going to have 11 or 12 guys drafted this year. So, wow. But I think the recruit better. I think the wins, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Not right away, for sure. 9 to 10 wins is what I look at. Like my expectations for them is to compete for Big Ten championships and have playoff appearances, like being contention for a playoff appearance every year, right? I'm not saying they should win the national championship every year or should be competing for a national championship every year. I mean, if you're competing for a playoff spot and you make the playoffs, you're competing for a national championship, but not every team is actually competing for a national championship every year when they think they are. I don't know. I like my expectation is competing for Big Ten championships, competing for playoff spots.
Yeah, no, I think that's what this has to be. The standard can't really change that much. Is it fair to expect Sherrone Moore to do it? Like they've lost one Big Ten game in the last 3 years, right? They beat Ohio State 3 straight years, been in the playoffs 3 straight years. I think with the new Big Ten, it's going to get harder. You have Ohio State clicking on all cylinders this offseason, it seems like, right? You hit lightning in a bottle with a couple of recruiting classes and coaching staffs, right? That's very hard to replicate. You saw how hard it is to win a national championship, right? It took you 3 years to get there. You won in overtime in the Rose Bowl. and then you beat Washington, obviously. So yeah, I don't think if he doesn't win a national title in his first 3, 4 years, I don't think he's a bust at all. Like you mentioned, compete for national championships or compete for college football playoff berths and Big Ten championships. And guess what, Sherrone Moore, you're following an era where Jim Harbaugh just beat Ohio State 3 straight times. Your expectation is going to be beating Ohio State, right? Fair or unfair, right? That's going to be the expectation there at Michigan, as it is for Ryan Day right now. Is he? And here's the deal: like, if he turned out to be Ryan Day, who, by the way, is 56-8, right? I think that is a tremendous success. No matter what happens, he's a bounce of the ball here and there from winning a couple national titles, right? So I don't think this is that big. I don't think comparing him, if he lives up to Ryan Day, is a bad at all. I'm sure Michigan fans won't want to hear that, but that's what I kind of see this as, where you're kind of a guy elevated from within to be chosen as a successor, taking over from a successful program and a successful head coach, obviously, Jim Harbaugh and Urban Meyer. But yeah, I like you mentioned, 9 to 10. You got to be closer to more 10-win seasons than 9-win seasons. I think has to be the expectation there after what you've done recently, fair or unfair, right? Like I guess fairly, I think 9, 9, 10 wins. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be really hard, and we'll see if it gets. We'll see what happens to win totals and to like how we view a 9-3 team in one of those Power Two conferences and how that changes in the next couple of years because of how hard the schedules are, because of going on the road, going to travel Eugene, going to California for those schools, going out to Seattle, play Washington. I think it's going to be harder than it ever has been. And so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, I'm going to go expectation. I think you hit on the head. 9, 10 wins is pretty realistic and also like stern.
We talk about giving a coach an A means that they're going to exceed expectations. A B, they meet expectations. C, they do not meet expectations. I'll give the higher B plus. I think he can exceed expectations, but I think he will meet expectations. I think he will win 9 to 10 games a year. I think he can absolutely do that. I think he can recruit at a high level. I think he can win ball games as long as he keeps, that culture inside that building. If he finds a way to keep that there, he's a young guy too. I mean, like, I don't know if this is his final destination. Like, if like, meaning would he take a job anywhere? He's an Oklahoma grad. I don't know that he would take the Oklahoma job. I don't know if there are any other jobs that he would actually physically take over this job. What's crazy is that this is a 5-year, $27 million deal for a program that just won a national championship. That is dirt cheap, like dirt cheap.
But
You're
hey,
paying five.
you have to reallocate those resources and to beefing up whatever you have to do. I'm not going to say NIL because it's not technically NIL, but whatever you have to do to get an elite coaching staff, elite training staff, all the programs and the resources you need to have a massive recruiting staff and an army of just elites, just killers on the recruiting trail, bodies everywhere, analysts everywhere, whatever you need, like you mentioned, that has to be made up somewhere because you can't just be the Michigan Athletic Department and be like, hey, we got a guy for a steal, right? Let's pocket the money.
half
No, no,
half of the price.
you
Half of the
have to
price of what he should
push.
be getting. Like
You have to push.
he's getting half of what he should be getting paid.
Yeah, yeah.
Now he,
It's
he
it's
hasn't he hasn't done anything yet, but like the way that these other coaches are going, like if they were to pay Brian Kelly would be getting paid 11, $12 million a year. If
oh
you were to pull
yeah.
him out of LSU, he would be
Well,
getting
that's
paid 11, $12 million a year.
and you're saving money on a buyout too, because you'd have to buy Brian Kelly out. You have to buy out whoever
Yes.
else you would have wanted to, right? Chris Kleiman at Kansas State. So yeah, but I don't want to paint this as like a financial saver, and that's why they did it. I think this is
No,
like
no,
made
but
sense.
benefits. Those are
Yep.
benefits. This is a good hire, guys.
Yeah. To follow up you, I think B plus is right where I see it. Right where I see it. I do think yes, like Michigan has been on top of the college football world the past couple of years, right? They're probably in your top 3 or 4, depending on what you want to say in terms of programs the past couple of years. Um, but let's be honest, it's been a tough couple decades, right? With Rich Rod, the Lloyd Carr years were pretty up and down. Brady Hoke, obviously, a very disappointing kind of season. And even the early Jim Harbaugh days, yes, they were good, but they also were disappointing at some times. He couldn't beat Michigan State and Ohio State until 2021. And then obviously everything clicked. and it worked out for him. I would say yes, because the program has been humming doesn't mean it just will continue to hum. I do think give Sherrone more patience. I don't want to like say temper your expectations because at a program like Michigan, you shouldn't have to. But the reality of it is like it's getting harder to win in Big Ten, and your recruiting hotbed is a little bit different than down south. If you're Georgia and Texas, Florida, even Alabama, right, programs like that, and so it's harder now. Obviously, that big blue, the big yellow M, the maize and blue, right? Like that is obviously a national brand, and that can help you recruit nationally, which I think Sherrone Moore will take to his advantage. And obviously, being in the national championship, being in the college football playoffs, having all the respect and notoriety and national attention will help you for sure in improving that and improving recruiting and doing everything you need to maintain this level of success. I would just say caution your expectations for Sherrone Moore. Don't run out a really good coach because he's young and because he isn't living up to Jim Harbaugh's last 3 years at Michigan. Like don't do that to him because it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard. Yeah. B plus to me.